So, this week's Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu discovered that it was too difficult for him to lead the nation on his own. So let's start. Source number 1. It says like this. So he asked God, I need some help. So this is God's suggestion to Moshe. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. God says to Moshe, Esfali 70 ish miziknei Israel, collect to me 70 men from the elders of Israel, asher yadata ki em ziknei ha'am veshotrav, that you know that they are the elders of the nation and the officers, velakachta otam el ohel moed, take them to the meeting tent, veityatzvu sham imach, and they should stand there together with you. Veyaradti vedibarti imcha, and I will come down and I will speak to you, sham, over there in the meeting tent. And then what am I going to do? Ve'atzalti min haruach asher alecha, I will going to take from the spirit that is upon you, ve'samti alehem, I'm going to put your spirit on them, ve'nasu itcha b'masa ha'am, and they will carry with you with the burden of the nation, ve'lo tisa ata levadecha, you're not going to have this burden all on your own. Yeah, this is source number 1, and this happens in this week's Parsha. There's another time where a similar things happened, as we're going to see just before Moshe passes away, just before his death. Let's look at the second one. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, and God says to Moshe, Kach lecha et Yoshua bin Nun, take Joshua, the son of Nun, ish asher ruach bo, he is one of the men that has a spirit on him, vesamachta et yadcha alav, and you should put your hands on him, lay your hands on him. And over here comes the word smicha, to become ordained. This is where the ordination comes from. Moshe ordains Yehoshua. Vayas, just notice that when Hashem tells Moshe, he tells him to put his hand in the singular on him. Vayas Moshe kasher tziva Hashem oto. Moshe did whatever God commanded him. Vayikach et Yehoshua, he took Yehoshua. Vayamideu lifnei Elazar HaKohen, lifnei kol ha'edah. He stood him in front of Elazar the priest and in front of the whole nation. Vayismoch et yadav. By this time Aaron passed away already, and both Nadav and Avihu passed away, so Elazar was the next Kohen. Vayismoch et yadav alav. But look, when Moshe puts his hand, Hashem told him to put it to one hand, and Moshe puts both hands. He gave him extra. Vayismoch et yadav alav. He put his hands on him. Vayetzaveu kasher diber Hashem beyad Moshe. And he commanded him just like Hashem commanded, talk in the hands of Moshe. Let's look at this whole concept of smicha now. In source number 3, this is for Maimonides. So it says, Echad bedin hagadol ve'echad senerin haktana, whether it is the high court, whether it is a small court, or bedin sheshlosha, or any even minor court of 3 people, tzarich sheyeh echad mehem samuch mipi hasamuch. He needs a person, the person needs to be ordained from somebody who was ordained. So in other words, you need to go back all the way to where? To Yehoshua bin Nun, to Moshe, Yehoshua bin Nun. Moshe Rabbeinu samach et Yehoshua. Moshe is the one who ordained Yehoshua, beyad, with his hand. Sheneemar, because it says, Vayismoch et yadav alav, and he put his hand upon him, Vayetzaveu, and he commanded him. V'chen hashivim meskenim, the same thing with the 70 elders. Moshe Rabbeinu semacham, v'shartam alahem shechina. Moshe Rabbeinu ordained them, and then the Spirit of God dwelt upon them. V'otam hazkenim samchu la'acherim, that elders gave smicha to the next generation, v'acherim l'nacherim, and then to the next generation. V'nimtzeu asmuchim ish mipi ish at bedino shel Yehoshua. So it went man after man until the courts of Yehoshua. Ve'at beidino shel Moshe Rabbeinu. So you have to go back until the court of Yeshua and ultimately to Moshe Rabbeinu. Ve'ketzad yasmicha. How do you become ordained? For generations, לדורות. לא שיסמכו ידיהם על ראש הזקן. It's not that you put your hands. That's not laying of hands. We're not talking about that. What are we talking about? אלא שקוראים לו רבי. It means that we call the person a rabbi. ואומרים לו, and then we say to him, since you're a rabbi, הרי את סמוך, you're ordained. So what does the ordination does? ויש לך רשות לדון אפילו דיני כנסות. Which means you can judge even when it comes to penalties. Now there's a difference when it comes to penalties and when it comes to straight. For example, if me and you, or two people have a disagreement about business, what to do. So they both can come to any person. According to the Torah, it doesn't have to be a rabbi. They're allowed to go to any person as long as they both agree to abide by the ruling. It's an abide by the ruling. This is called going to arbitration or whatever it is, not catches in Jewish court. God is happy with it, everybody is happy with it. Over here it's extra. It's not what you owe the guy. It's do you have the power to penalize somebody? For that you need to be an ordained rabbi. In other words, penalizing somebody, it means he doesn't agree. When two people come to you as a rabbi to judge between them, they both, from the beginning, agree to abide by your ruling. When you give a penalty, obviously the guy doesn't want to pay the penalty. So it says, in order to have the right to give a penalty, now you want to give a penalty, now that has to be ordained all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu. You cannot just give a penalty without being ordained, even if the people agree. So, barishana, in the beginning, היה כל מי שנשמח סומך לתלמידיו. Anybody who was ordained used to ordain his students. וחכמים חלקו כבוד להלל הזקן. The sages gave honor to Hillel. והתקינו שלא יהיה אדם נשמח אלא ברשות הנשיא. And then they instituted that it's just going to be the leader, the head. He's the only one who's going to do ordination. Not the regular folks, not the regular rabbis. Okay? So let's look at the way the Rebbe looks at this whole situation. It says like this. Hasmicha, we are on page 4 on the bottom. Hasmicha rishonahi, the first ordination was Hasmicha shesamach Moshe leYoshua. It was the way Moshe ordained Yoshua. כפי שנצטווה משה רבנו, just like he was commanded, קח את יהושע, he was commanded, take Yoshua, ושמחת את ידך עליו. He said, put your hand on him, וכן עשה, and this is what he do. He did, ויסמוך את ידיו עליו, ויצווהו. He says, he lay his hand upon him, Moshe lay hand on Yoshua, and he commanded him. וכמו כן שמח משה את 70 הזקנים, the same manner that he did with Yoshua, he did to the 70 elders, ואותם הזקנים שמחו לאחרים, and those elders laid their hands on other ones, ואחרים לאחרים, and they went them down from generation to generation, ונמצאו הסמוכים איש מפי איש עד בית דינו של יהושע, בית דינו של משה רבנו. So anybody who has a smicha goes back all the way to Yeshua or go back to Moshe Rabbeinu. And then Rebbe continues, says, we're going to see that this smicha is going to be problematic soon. ומכיוון שסמיכת חכמים היא מצווה, since this whole smicha is a mitzvah, which mitzvah is it? Which of the 1613 commandments is the ordination mitzvah? So it explains. נכלל במצוות עשה של תורה למנות שופטים ושוטרים. It is one of the positive commandments to make sure you have courts. You have a legal system. So in order to have a legal system, you have to have ordination, somebody who runs the legal system. הרי מובן, from here we understand, שכל חכם שהוסמך איש מפי איש עד משה רבנו, that any sage that was ordained man for man until Moshe Rabbeinu, יש לו חיוב ללמד תורה לתלמידים. He has to ordain the next generation. It's his responsibility to make sure this thing continues. Like it says, ושילמתם לבניך לא תלמידים. He needs to make sure it goes to the next generation. These are the students. ולהשתדל לסמוך את אלו הרואים לשמיכה. To try to ordain anybody who befits to be ordained. ובלשון הכתוב לקיצז, אל תמנע טוב מבעליו. It says, if somebody should be ordained, don't take it away from him, give it to him. ובפרט שעל ידי זה יימשך עניין הסמיכה מדור לדור. And specifically, that through this it's going to go from one generation to the next. גודל החשיבות וההכרח שבעניין הסמיכה, the importance of סמיכה, ועד כמה צריכה להיות השתדלות לסמוך חכמים, and until how much the sages need to try to make sure that this institution remains, יש ללמוד מסיפור הגמרא אודות רבי יהודה בן בבא. We're going to see how important it is to the Jewish nation from a story in the Gemara. And the story tells us about Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba. It says this is a pillar of Judaism. Without smicha, all Judaism is gone. Let's see inside. So this is from Tractate Sanhedrin, page 5 in the bottom. פעם אחת גזרה מלכות הרשעה, there was one time that there was a decree by Rome, גזרה על ישראל, they made a decree on the Jewish people. לבטל את שרשרת הסמיכה. They decided, you know what? If the Jewish people have leaders, we won't be able to take away Judaism from the nation. In other words, we need to take away whom? We need to take away the leaders. Once the leaders are gone, then we have the masses. So we need to make sure there's no more smicha. There's no more ordination. Once there's no more ordination, the people will not have a direction they can go through. ואת סמכותם של חכמי ארץ ישראל. They wanted to take all the ordination of the sages of Israel. ואמרו, so this is the role that they made. שכל הסומך ייהרג. Anybody who ordains, we're going to kill. So if we hear about any ordination, we're going to kill the person. וכל הנסמך ייהרג. So either the rabbi or the student, both of them are going to be put to death. ועוד קבעו, and they further continued, שעיר שסומכים בה תחרב. If you guys want to make a city, you know that you're going to take over, that you're going to say smicha in that city, we're not only going to kill the two rabbis, we're going to kill the entire city. ואף סימוני תחומים שסומכים בהם יעקרו. And even any signs identifying the boundaries of the city, because this is from the rabbis identify the boundaries of the cities. So any city that identified its boundaries with a Jewish eruv or anything, we're also going to destroy. In other words, we want to take it completely apart. Why? כדי להרתיע את הסומכים והנסמכים, we want to make sure that people are going to be afraid. מתוך חשש לשלומם שלא קודחם. He says, we know the sages are not afraid to die. We know they're not afraid to die, so we're going to tell them, if you guys do it, we're going to kill everybody else. This way, they know that the sages are not going to do it. Because if it's just to protect themselves, they're going to go on mesirut nefesh. They will die for the cause. But if their actions will cause the death of another Jew, they're not going to do. This is what the Romans wanted to do. So, מה עשה Yehuda ben Baba? So look at the importance. What is Yehuda ben Baba did? הלך וישב לו בין שני הרים גדולים. He went and placed himself between two mountains. ובין שתי עיירות גדולות. And between two cities. Why did he place himself in between cities? So they wouldn't say, they wouldn't be able to destroy. If they will say you're closer to this city, he says, no, just in between the two cities. So he doesn't belong here, he doesn't belong over there. ובין שני תחומי שבת. He put himself inside a situation, כלומר במקום שומם, a place with no jurisdiction, there's no city who has jurisdiction over there, שלא יוכלו לומר ששייך לתחומה של עיירה מסוימת, ולא עניש בני, so that they won't be able to punish the people of that city. Where was it? בין אבשה לשפרעם, between these two villages, אבשה and שפרעם. And what did he do over there? ושמח שם 5 זקנים. And he ordained over there 5 elders. ואלו הן. And by the way, you know all these 5 elders. They're famous in Jewish places. Rabbi Meir, one of the elders was Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, this is the famous Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Yossi ורבי אלעזר ben Shamoa. Yeah, all those famous people.
Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes?
That's right, Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes. This is all the big guys. Rabbi Avaya מוסיף שהיה שם אף רבי נחמיה בין הנסמכים. And there was also Rabbi Nehemiah between the ones he ordained. Kevad, there's a joke that says that somebody was once told a secret, right? And then he says, I didn't tell the secret, but the guy who says, I didn't reveal your secret, but the guy I told to, he revealed it. You know, this is one of the things. Once these people were ordained, of course, people started to talk, and of course, in Judaism, we have all the time those people who betrayed their nation. So people say to the Romans, yeah, there was somebody who got ordained, and that was the problem. So, כיוון שהכירו אויביהן בהם, since the enemies came, שנודע להם הדבר שסומכים שמה, they knew that there's ordination going on. אמר להן רבי יהודה בן בבא לחכמים. So Rabbi Yehuda told his 5 students, this is what we're going to do. בניי רוצו וברחו מכאן. It says, guys, run away. אמרו לו, רבי, מה תהיה עליך? They told him, but Rabbi, what's going to be with you? שאתה זקן ואינך יכול לרוץ. It says, you're old, you can't run away. You're hardly moving. אמר להם, הרי בין כה וכה הרי נמותי לפניהם כאבן שאין לה הופכים. It says, what do you want from me? It says, I'm like a stone, I can't move. In other words, if you guys are going to try to carry me, it's just going to mean that not only I die, you will also die. It says, I'm lost. There's no cause for me. שבוודאי לא אוכל להימלט גם אם תעזרוני. I will not be able to escape even if you help me. ואם לא תימלטו לבדכם, גם אתם תהרגו. So if you're not going to run by yourself, you will also get killed. אמרו, לא זזו האויבים משם. So what happened? The students went away, and the enemies came to Rav Baba. What did they do? עד שנעצו בו 300 חניתות. They stabbed him with 300 spears. Killed him. של ברזל ועשו כחברה. They made him like a sieve. They put in him 300 holes in his body. That's what the Romans did. And what do we learn from him? We learn from it the importance of smicha. Right? It shows you how important is this smicha. ומזה למדים, from here we learned, שמלכות הרשעה ידעה והבינה, it says the Romans understood, שסמיכה עניין עיקרי אצל עם ישראל, that ordination is a major thing within the Jewish people. ולכן גזרו והחמירו כל כך בעניין זה. That's why they made such a decree. כי ידוע שגזירת המלכות היה רק על עניינים מקריבים את ישראל. The Romans were smart. When they made a decree, they made a decree on the essence of the Jewish nation, on things that are going to continue it. כמו מילה, Shabbat, like we know about circumcision, Shabbos, and similar things. So therefore it was so important, Rabbi Yehuda says there is no way, we're going to continue it. Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba מסר את נפשו בפועל, ממש כדי לסמוך תלמידים, and he gave you his life away in order to continue ordination. Interesting things. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you a secret. There's no more ordination today. The ordination that we have today, no one claims today that they have ordination all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. Today, when a person becomes a rabbi, that doesn't come, he cannot go back with it all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. Nobody lays claim to go back all the way that way. So we need to understand, if it's such an important thing to the Jewish nation, what happened to him? How did he disappear? And why did he disappear? If it was so important, circumcision didn't disappear from the Jewish nation, how come ordination disappeared from the Jewish nation? So let's continue. Let's look at source number 5 by the Rambam, by Maimonides on page 8. And this is what the Maimonides says. Nir'im li advarim. So it looks like already in the time of Maimonides, he wasn't ordained. Maimonides wasn't ordained. So already at his time we know that there was no ordination. But he says the halacha. What's the halacha? שאם הסכימו כל החכמים שבארץ ישראל למנות דיינים, that if all the sages that are in the land of Israel agreed to make judges ולסמוך אותם and then to ordain them, there's another important rule that one needs to remember. Ordination only exists in Israel. There is no ordination outside of the land of Israel. And Maimonides says, that he thinks that if you can get a bunch of rabbis in the land of Israel, and they all agree, they can ordain somebody. הרי אלה סמוכים, it says, there are people ordained. ויש להם לדון דיני כנסות. So because they're ordained, they have the power to judge penalties. ויש להם לסמוך אחרים, and then they also have the power to ordain other people. So it says, אם כן, if this is so, Maimonides says, למה היו חכמים מצטערים על הסמיכה? So it says, why did the sages have hurt when it comes to ordination? So it says, כדי שלא יבטלו דיני כנסות מישראל. Because they didn't want penalties to be not known in the Jewish people. They says we have to make this ruling, otherwise people are not going to know anything about penalties. Since penalties is only in the land of Israel, and since penalties is extra things that a normal Rebbe doesn't do, if we're not going to keep it for 1,000 years, 2,000 years, people are going to forget about such things. So therefore we need to bring it back. But then, לפי שישראל מפוזרים, so says, so why didn't they institute it for the entire years? Why wasn't it in the time of the Rambam already, people who are not ordained? What happened? So he explains. לפי שישראל מפוזרים, because the Jewish people were scattered all around the world. ואי אפשר שיסכימו כולם. It is impossible that they're all going to agree. ואם היה שם סמוך מפי סמוך, אינו צריך דעת כולן. And if you have smicha, ordination, all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu, you don't need the opinion of somebody else. You don't have to have everybody in agreement. אלא דן דיני כנסות לכל, שהרי נסמך מפי דין. Then he has the power, since he got the power from God himself for penalties. Therefore, he can do it without involving any other rabbis. והדבר צריך הכרע. And this needs a resolution. So let's see one more thing to understand how important is the smicha. הוכחה נוספת על גודל ההשתדלות בעניין הסמיכה. There's one more proof on how much we should emphasize that ordination is important. שנים רבות we still don't know exactly what happened to it. Why did it disappear? But we see a reintroduction of him. Let's see. שנים רבות לאחרי שנתבטלה הסמיכה, many years after ordination was nullified, נאספו גדולי ישראל כדי לחדש את עניין הסמיכה. The Jewish people, the sages came together in order to renew the ordination. כידוע שבזמנו של מהרב יעקב בירב, that even in the time of יעקב בירב, נאספו כמה וכמה גדולי ישראל וסמכו את מהרב בירב על יסוד דברי הרמב"ם. They did it according to the words of the Rambam, that if people come in Israel, even though they were not ordained from beforehand, if everybody agrees, they are allowed to ordain people, as long as everybody agrees. Like it says, שאם הסכימו כל החכמים שבארץ ישראל למנות דיינים, if all the sages agrees that you can put sages, you can ordain ולסמוך אותם, הרי אלה סמוכים, to ordain them, then we consider them סמוכים. ומהרב בירב סמך 4 מחכמי ישראל, And Maharav Beirav, he ordained 4 Jews. And by the way, you probably know, especially the first one, Ubenehem, Maran Beit Yosef, he gave smicha to the Beis Yosef. He's the one who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, the book of Jewish laws. והבית יוסף סמך את רב משה אלשיך, and the Beit Yosef ordained the Alshich, and the Alshich ordained Rav Chaim Vital. Rav Chaim Vital is a student of the Arizal. You can see that it was in one thing. אלא שסמיכה זו בטלה. But we see that something went wrong over there. Even though they were all ordained, it became nullified, this smicha. Why did it become nullified? בסביבת המחלוקת של לוי בן חביב, שהתנגד לכך. כידוע ומפורסם פרטי הדברים. לוי בן חביב said, he was in Yerushalayim, they were all in Tzfat. He says, I don't agree to smicha. And in order to have smicha, the Rambam, as we read, says you need to have all the Jews come together and say it correctly. He says, so he disagreed. ועל פי כל הנזכר, so they also try to reinstitute smicha, if you notice. ועל פי כל הנזכר לעיל, according to what we explained, גדולה התמיהה, now we have to wonder, מדוע נפסקה שרשרת הסמיכה בישראל? Why did it stop? Why did this ordination stop? מכיוון שכל חכם שנשמח ישתדל לסמוך על תלמידים, every sage, every person who was ordained should have ordained his students. ותלמידיו ישתדלו לסמוך תלמידיהם, and the students tried to ordain their students, וכך הלך הדבר ונמשך דור אחר דור, and we see it went generation after generation, and even it was reintroduced. אם כן, מאיזה טעם נפסק הדבר? So it says, why did it stop? Okay, so מצד אחד, from one side, עניין הסמיכה הוא דבר חשוב ומוכח ביותר. It is a very important thing, like we mentioned before. ולאידך, but there's a second side. What's the other side? אין קושי מיוחד בדבר. So today, as you all know, nobody is ordained all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. The people who are called the rabbi, me or whoever is called the rabbi, we have a document that we are a rabbi, that an institution gave us. But that doesn't go back all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. It's someone that can tell people lachat. Rabbis today don't have the power, even if we live in Israel, to take penalties. This is the reason why also the rabbis today don't have the power to institute, to go back to looking at the moon to decide which day of the month Pesach is going to be on. If there's a court in Israel, why don't they do it in court Israel? Because nobody has the power, because nobody is ordained. The last person that we know that was ordained was Rabbi Yosef Karo, Rabbi Chaim Vital. Those are the last people who we know they were ordained. And even they weren't ordained in such a manner to go way out to Moshe Rabbeinu. But the Rambam permits such ordination, as long as everybody agrees. And we see that even in their generation, there were people who didn't agree. So let's look at what's happening. What's the problem going to be with ordination if nobody is ordained? So the first thing, En koshi miyuchad b'davar. It says nothing happened. The Jewish people we can see survived without ordination. So today we don't go by the moon, we go by calendar. The sages set up a calendar and we go by this calendar. We've been going by this calendar for thousands of years. We don't need certain things. We don't need the Beit HaMikdash. We don't need Sanhedrin. All we need is the sage, that somebody will be fitting to receive ordination. For sure we have throughout the generation somebody who could have been ordained. And we could have sent these people to the land of Israel to get it, if it was really necessary. And even if you're going to say, there were times that were not many Jews in Eretz Israel, you could have sent the Babylonian Talmud. Even at that time there was no ordination anymore. You could have sent those guys back to Israel, get ordained over there, and then move back to Babel. היו יכולים לבוא לארץ ישראל כדי לקבל סמיכה ולסמוך אחרים. They could have come to Israel to become ordained and do it. We're on page 10, sorry. ומכיוון שכן, הרי אין כל סיבה שבשלב מסוים יפסיקו לסמוך. So what's the reason that in a particular time they stop this ordination? ואם כן תמוה ביותר, כיצד ומתי נפסקה הסמיכה בישראל? So we need to examine when and why ordination stopped in the land of Israel. ההנחה המקובלת היא, if you're going to ask the people in university, yeah, for example, all the professors in university, they discuss this problem, the people in university. And they say, שהפסיקו לסמוך מפני גזירת המלכות. They say the reason they stopped it is because the decree of the Romans. Omnam, but the Rebbe says that's nonsense. It cannot be. It says why it cannot be. על פי האמור לעיל, אודות גודל חשיבותה של הסמיכה, it says if the ordination is so important to the Jewish people, לא ייתכן לומר שמצד גזירת המלכות נפסקה הסמיכה. You cannot say that just because the Romans decreed it was stopped. The Roman decree is also not to keep Shabbos. We don't care what the Romans decree. Yeah? The entire Jewish nation was willing to die and keep Shabbos. So this is one of the things that the entire nation is willing to die for. Especially the sages are willing to die for, as we see. With this famous story that we told you before. So that can't be the reason. And it says, and also, you cannot say that the Romans, there was always small villages in the land of Israel that the Romans didn't care about, or didn't know about, or they were hidden, or they didn't control. So why wasn't people ordained there even when the Romans were there? So it says, מובן וגם פשוט, it's understood, שגם לאחרי גזירת המלכות שלא לסמוך, that even if the Roman says not to ordain, הרי מפני גודל החשיבות וההכרח שבעניין הסמיכה, because of the importance of ordination, בוודאי עשו חכמי ישראל את כל המאמצים האפשריים כדי להמשיך כלים של הסמיכה. We know for sure the sages continued and did everything in the power to continue it. ובאשר לפחד מפני גזירות המלכות, and if you say they're afraid, בוודאי יכולים לסמוך עצות לכך. They could have done many things, כגמול לסמוך בחשאי. They could have done the ordination quietly. I ordain you, you ordain one more person. Don't tell anybody. That's it. או בעיירה רחוקה ונידחה, they could have done it in a faraway village, ששם יש להניח שהמלכות לא תחפש אחר תלמידי חכמה שיכולים לסמוך. In a faraway village you can rely that the Romans aren't going to go there. Why? כי מקומם של החכמים בישיבות מפורסמות. The sages sat in ירושלים, in Tzfat, in the famous yeshivas. They didn't sit in a small village somewhere. So go over there, make a couple of people rabbis, and continue on your merry way. Page 11. על פי האמור לעיל, according to what we said before, יש לבאר גם את הטעם והסיבה לכך שבמשך הדורות נתבטל לגמרי קידוש החודש על פי ראייה, וכן עניין הסמיכה. So now we're also going to understand also why now in the land of Israel people don't come back together and sanctify the moon by looking at the moon. Why do we rely on a calendar? So let's see. So after the exile, מכיוון שלא היה בית דין קבוע, since we didn't have a court in one place, והחכמים הסמוכים נתפזרו במקומות שונים, and the sages went to many places, ובמשך הזמן כבר לא היה ברור ומפורסם לכל מי הם סמוך איש מפי איש. And then what happened? You have people in Syria, you have people in Iraq, you have people in Egypt, even in the Babylonian time, right? It was people all over the place. And even if you had ordination, and there was ordination continuing throughout those times, it's going to be a problem. What's going to be a problem? הרי חכם שקיבל סמיכה מחכם הנמצא במקום פלוני, if you received ordination from a guy who's in Egypt, for example, and this is ordination, good ordination, all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu, now you have the power when you go to another place to go by the ruling, right? ששם לא יודעים שהחכם הנמצא כמקום פלוני הוא סמוך. Says, you're going to say I was ordained. I'm going to say, how do I know you were ordained? It's not like today, you can pick up the phone and you can ask the guy over there, did you ordain him? It wasn't. It took a long time to go from place to place, and people were moved from place to place. If they would have accepted ordination, then all of a sudden you have a guy coming from place to place who says he has the power to do penalties in the land of Israel. And I don't know if he really does have the power or not. I cannot check up on him. I know people in my community, but the Jews didn't live in one community anymore. They started scattering all over the place. So he says, what's going to happen? עלולה להתעורר מחלוקת אם יש תוקף לסמיכה שלו אם לאו. There was a problem to know if this guy really was ordained or he wasn't ordained. We don't know. It's going to be a problem. And if you're going to start saying, oh, we trust this guy, we trust this sage, we trust this sage we don't know about. So how can you do that? I'll give you another example. Even in the time of the Rambam, when the Rambam wrote his book, and his book went to Europe, they didn't accept him even as a rabbi. Never mind an ordained rabbi. They didn't accept him. So imagine if it's ordination, you have the power now to penalize us. And ordination means that the guy comes from Egypt to Spain, and he tells the guys, I have the power, you guys do something wrong, all of you are penalized, give me money. He says, who are you? How do we know you're ordained even? He says, there's no such power. That's what they're afraid of. ובפרט כאשר החכם מוסמך ירצה לקדש על פי ראייה, שאז בוודאי תגדל המחלוקת ביותר. And now he wants to go and take away the calendar and bring over... It says, what's the problem? It says, what's going to be the problem if a sage is going to say, I'm going to go by the moon and not by the calendar? You know what's going to be the problem? That he's going to decide when Pesach is. Which means... And the rest of the Jewish nation are not going to agree necessarily, or this group is not going to agree with his smicha, right? Because they don't know he was taken from. So he's going to tell half the Jewish nation, next Tuesday Pesach starts, and the other places are going to start Pesach next Wednesday. And meanwhile, the guys on Tuesday are eating chametz, on Pesach. So he says, you can't do that. You don't have the power unless you, even if there is ordination, we're going to take it away. Because it's going to cause what? It's going to cause problems within the Jewish nation. ולכן גם בנוגע לעניין הסמיכה. So therefore, when it comes to ordination, פתחה ונתמעטה השתדלותם של חכמי ישראל הסמוכים. It says, it's not that people weren't ordained. The ordination continued, but it wasn't important anymore. Because even if you really ordained all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu, you couldn't do anything with it. You didn't have the power enough ordained. We didn't want to give you the power of ordained person, because if you would get the power and other people will disagree, there's going to be problems in the Jewish nation. So the sages decided, in order not to have conflict within the Jewish nation, even when people who are ordained, we're not going to consider it ordained. There's no more ordination. In other words, people might be ordained, but we don't care. They don't have more power than a regular rabbi. We're not going to give them the power, because it's going to cause problems within the nation. וכן במשך הדורות פתחו והלכו הסמוכים איש מפי איש. So after generation, they become less and less. עד שנתבטלה תורת סמיכה מישראל, until it was gone from the Jewish people. ויש להביא הוכחה לדבר. Page 12. We're going to bring a proof for the matter. הן בנוגע לקביעות המועדים, when it comes to establish when is a particular holiday, והן בנוגע לעניין הסמיכה, and also the same thing when it comes to ordination itself. ממעשים שהיו בפועל, from things that actually happened. הוזכר לעיל אודות המחלוקת המפורסמת שהייתה בין We already explained the disagreement that was between Rav v'Chachmei Tzfat, between Bei Rav, Ma'ari Bei Rav, and the sages of Tzfat. V'Chachmei Yerushalayim, and the sages of Yerushalayim, al derech chidush smicha, when it comes to smicha. So we already explained this is the time of Rabbi Yosef Karo was ordained, right? So everybody is with me. Now you have to remember what happened at that time. Everything is very political. Everybody thinks, politics just started this day. Even at those times there was big politics. And we're talking about politics with a person like Rabbi Yosef Karo, Rabbi Chaim Vital. We're not talking about, what was the politics over there? Tzfat at that time had around 15,000 inhabitants. Yerushalayim had a little bit more than 1,000. Yerushalayim had almost nothing. Tzfat was the center of the Jewish people in Eretz Israel at that time. Yerushalayim had a little bit more than 1,000, almost nothing. When he was ordained, he ordained Rabbi Yosef Karo, and then Rabbi Yosef Karo ordained the Al-Shich and all the other ones. There was a sage in Yerushalayim who opposed it, who opposed the entire ordination process. He says, I am against it because of these problems that we said before. You're going to become ordained. You know what you're going to start doing? You're going to start saying when is going to be the new moon, and then other congregation are not going. Maybe it's okay for your generation. What's going to happen 3 generations from now? People are going to move from one place to another place. This guy is going to stay ordained. This guy is going to stay ordained. He's going to say that he saw the moon on a Monday, and then it's going to be a problem from other people. They're going to accept him. And then Pesach is going to be celebrated on the wrong time and so on. וגם כאן רואים שכאשר חכמי צפת ראו שהדברים מביאים לידי מחלוקת, and also over here, we see that when the sages of Tzfat saw that it's going to make problems, שכן מהרלב"ח עמד כתוקף על דעתו שאין מקום לחידוש הסמיכה, because the sage in Yerushalayim says you cannot bring back ordination, לא הייתה להם ברירה, even though they were ordained, not only they were ordained, they continued to ordain other people in other generation, אלא לבטל עניין זה. But even though they all continued to ordain, they say the ordination means nothing. They say we are going to continue to ordain people, but the people who are ordained don't have the power of ordained people. Yeah, that's the way it continued. ועד כדי כך, it says, how do we know this? Because the Beit Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Karo, the one who wrote Shulchan Aruch, אחד מאלה שנסמכו על ידי מערב בערב, he was ordained, לא הזכיר עניין זה בשולחן ערוך. Look, when he wrote his book of laws, he should have emphasized the point of ordination. You know what he did? He didn't even put it inside. You can't find a word about it, because he agreed that with the other guy it can cause problems. ולא עוד, אלא שפוסק בשולחן ערוך, he even writes in the Jewish law, כיצד יש לנהוג בזמן הזה כאשר אין סמוכים? He says, this is how you behave in such a time when no one is ordained. He says, what do you mean no one was ordained? He was ordained. Why is he saying no one was ordained? אף שהוא בעצמו היה סמוך. ותם הדבר, and the reason why he said he didn't take the power of the nation with him, בראותו שהדבר לא נתקבל בקבוצות ישראל מפני התנגדות, he saw that there are some communities in the Jewish world that did not accept it. So he didn't want to cause disagreement amongst the Jewish people. So he says, I'm not going to take the power of the ordination. This is actually something very, very interesting. There's a book called Magi Sharim. Did anybody hear about this book? You heard about Magi Sharim? Magi Sharim was an angel that revealed himself to Rabbi Yosef Karo. He used to come to Rabbi Yosef Karo and reveal to him secrets, all kinds of secrets. And Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote all those secrets that the angel told him in a book. There's actually a book called Magi Sharim. This is all his conversation with that angel. Okay? And this is what he writes in the book about this occurrence. So let's look inside. It's on page 13. So the angel tells him, the angel tells him, כי מסרת נפשך על חזרת עטרת השמיכה. It says, because I saw that you gave your soul for the reintroducing of the ordination ליושנה. It says, you were ordained, and not only you were ordained, you ordained other people. תזכה להיות מוסמך מכל חכמי ארץ ישראל. It says, I'm going to give you a blessing that you're going to be the most ordained one amongst all the Jewish people. ומחכמי חוץ לארץ, and from among those who is outside of Israel. ועל ידך אחזיר השמיכה ליושנה, and through you I will return ordination to its old habit. ואזכך לגמור חיבורך, and I will be merit you so you can write the book of Jewish laws to the Jewish people. So it says even the angel agreed with his ordination, but he never took the power of ordination. ועתה, and it says now, לא נותר אלא לברר. So what we need to do now, we need to check, מהו הזמן המדויק שבו נפסק לגמרי עניין הסמיכה? What is the time that we stopped with this ordination? ובכן, it says, רבים מן החוקרים האחרונים שעסקו בזמן ביטול הסמיכה, many of the researchers that are dealing with this time of the nullification of ordination, מביאים הוכחות להאריך את הסמיכה לכל הפחות עד לתקופת הגאונים. They have letters until the time of the Geonim, of the sages, of the geniuses, as a Gaon. And this was around 1000, the year 1000, 1100 maybe. We have letters from the year 1100 that talks about this guy having a smicha. That goes back all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. ולא עוד, and not only that, מצינו מכתב של רבי אבטר, we find a letter of Rabbi Avatar, שנכתב בשנת 2000, was written in the year 1094, ותוכנו אודות אחדים שקיבלו סמיכם בימיו. It says about people who received ordination in his time, and he is one of them. הוא ממשיך שם שאחד מהם הלך לחיפה לקדש את השנה. And he says that one of them even went to Haifa in order to bring the new moon, the new year, according to the moon and not according to the calendar. ועל פי כל אריכות הדברים הנזכרים לעיל אודות הגודל התמיהה שבעניין ביטול הסמיכה, according to everything we said, says of the nullification, הרי אדרבה, says now comes something strange. מסתבר להאריך את זמן הסמיכה ככל האפשרי. So for sure at around 1200 there were still people who were ordained at the year 1200. So the Rebbe says, continues to say, it looks like the Rebbe actually says there's probably people today who are ordained all the way through to Moshe Rabbeinu. The only difference is that they didn't take the ordination with strength. Why? Because they didn't want to cause these problems within the nation. So the Rebbe says, do your research, עד שימצאו הוכחה ברורה שבתקופה מסוימת בוודאי בטלה הסמיכה לגמרי בכל המקורות. So you should continue to do the research until you find for sure that there's no more ordination. says, ואפילו אם לא מצינו הוכחות ברורות לקיומה של הסמיכה בדורות מאוחרים, and even though there's no one today who says he received ordination all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu, הרי אדרבה, לא ראינו אינה ראיה. It says the fact that there's no documents and nobody knows, that's not a proof. שכן הסברה נותנת, because it says logically it makes sense, שהסמיכה נמשכה זמן רב לאחרי סוף חוכמי הגמרא, כי נזכר לעיל בארוכה, that it continues many years after the Gemara, says, like he mentioned before. לזאת, it says, besides that, כדאי ביותר שימצאו כאלה שינסו לחקור בכתבי יד. It says, it's very important to do research, especially now that we found all documents, שבעוונותינו הרבים אין חקר כתבי היד נעשה ידי יהודים שלא מצווה מצוות. It says, unfortunately, it says, most of this research is not done by religious people, so they look at it in a different manner than we do. כדי לברר זה נושא לאשרו על בריאיו. So let religious researchers look at the old writings to see if they can find anything. ויש להניח שמכיוון שמזמן לזמן מתגלים כתבי יד נוספים, הנה משך הזמן התגלו כתבי יד נוספים שבהם כדי להפיץ אור בסוגיה מסתבכת זו. So the Rebbe says, we are probably going to find soon some people or some writings that actually discuss this point, and that's going to explain to us even if today there are ordained people or not. It looks like the Rebbe is hinting that he's thinking that there probably are people today who are ordained who don't say anything about it. Because saying anything about it is not going to matter, because you're not going to take the power of ordained rabbis anyway, because of the problem we find before. So it doesn't really matter, so there's no point of saying I was ordained all the way back to the end. Any questions?
Would if the group of Jewish people decided to ordain someone again as a group, would it have to be completely unanimous amongst the entirety?
It has to be in the land of Israel, and it has to be accepted by everybody. Otherwise, there's going to be a problem, like we see, according to the Rambam, that according to the historical facts, that when one person or one sage, one community doesn't accept it, that's it, it's all gone.
So one person could block the entire...
He has to be a person, he has to be a sage, not just someone who is a community or a person that doesn't accept it is going to cause a problem. So therefore, we don't take the power of the ordination today.
So with the reordination coming back, would that be an indication of Mashiach coming?
Not necessarily. But it might. Yeah.
But it's critical to keep the chain going. You can't start to say, hey, I like you. So even if you don't have any power,
very good.
But you're going back to Moses, and now
so
we'll have
the Rambam addresses this, and the Rambam says there's two ways to be ordained. The first way to be ordained is generation to generation, if you can go back all the way to Moshe. And then the Rambam says there's a second way to be ordained. If you're in Israel and everybody agrees on one person, on the ordination, you can reintroduce it as long as everybody agrees. And it has the same power as real ordination, as long as everybody agrees. And once everybody agrees once, it comes back, even if later on somebody is going to disagree, it's too late. If it was agreed upon one time and everybody agreed upon ordination, it comes back with the same power as the original ordination.